I'm Dave Ruppert, a dairy farmer near Nokomis, Illinois, which is in Montgomery County. Some of our land is in Christian County, which is just across the road. I'm the fifth generation operating the farm, and my daughter and her family are the sixth. The farm started in the 1850s when my great-great-great-grandfather came over from Germany. He was, as far as we know, he was a stowaway on a ship from Germany to get to New York. And then there was three brothers. One of them went to Pennsylvania, one went to Michigan, or stayed in New York, and then my side of the family come to Illinois, homesteaded here, 160 acres. And one of the interesting facts was the German settlers around here in the 1860s was looking for a religious, because that was part of the reason they came here in the first place. And so they got together and they wanted a Sunday school so that their kids would have religious training. And then they established the Lutheran church out here in the country. And we just celebrated our 154th anniversary, and my ancestors was a charter member of that church, and it's always meant a lot to this family, our faith and our religion. When I was a child growing up, we lived a mile down the road in a rented house. We also helped that family with their work. And I can remember, I was only 3 or 4 years old, but we still had a team of horses, and didn't really do anything with them except maybe the garden. But our neighbor across the road there, he was killed at a train crossing, and it was harvest time, so it was time to do the corn, and a lot of the corn was still shucked by hand back then. This was late 40s. And I can remember helping shuck corn, even though we wasn't very big. We were following the wagon, so whenever they threw the corn into the wagon, if they missed, then us kids would pick it up and toss it into the wagon. And something I can still see, I don't know why I remember this, but the horse pulling the wagon of corn, then we'd have to back it up to the corn crib to shovel it off into the corn crib, and to see that horse try to back up this wagon of corn, and his hind end basically was touching the ground because he was pushing so hard. I always wanted a Holstein cow. That's the black and white ones. And we didn't have that. We had milking shorthorns and Guernseys. But my mother's side of the family, who had registered Holsteins down by Effingham, Illinois, I always wanted one of those. And I had a dream when I was 5 years old that there was a Holstein out in this barn. And when I got up, and I kind of stuck with that and always wanted that. And then when it come time to be in 4-H, which was back then 10 years old, 1954 was one of the worst droughts that Illinois has ever had. So we didn't have anything, and so you didn't have money to go out and try to buy a calf. But the next year, a neighbor not too far away that had some registered Holsteins had health problems, so he sold his herd, and my dad bought a Holstein heifer that was supposed to be bred to have a calf, and for $90. He brought her home, and then she wasn't with calf, so we had to get her bred. But that's how we got started, and she turned out to be a pretty good cow. She had me 4 straight heifer calves, which is almost unheard of. And so that's kind of how we got started in the dairy and registered Holstein business. Before I got into 4-H, my dad had milking shorthorn cattle, and we belonged to that organization. And back then there was a lot of them around Central Illinois, and we had state sales and picnics, and we'd go to those. And I'd always work with one of the calves and stuff so we could sell it in the sale. Always had that interest in the cattle, and that's some of the younger memories anyway of being on the farm. We would cut corn for feed the cattle. We'd go out with a corn knife and the wagon and cut the corn, put it on the wagon, and take it up to the house for the cows to feed. And it was warm, and I was barefooted and crawled up on the pile of fodder. And of course, corn leaves, if you've ever been around corn leaves, they're sharp and they can cut. So I cut the bottom of my foot, and I haven't been barefooted since. The farm is basically 160 acres. We've gotten as high as 340, but we've never had a lot of acres. But we did concentrate on livestock, and eventually when I got into 4-H, I was the one that was interested in the dairy cattle. I guess I got to give my folks a lot of credit that they went ahead and tried to establish that.
Well, I grew up down the road, just 4 miles down the road, and I knew Dave almost, I guess, since I was in 4th grade. We went to the St. Paul's Lutheran School, and so I knew him then. I didn't like him that much then. But as time went on, yes, I think starting the 7th grade, we started talking more and doing a few things together. And so we pretty well dated all through high school, through his college years.
I went to the University of Illinois and taught agriculture at Highland, Illinois for 7 years.
I did not go to college. I worked at Firestone, worked my way up at Firestone, and then we got married his senior year of college. He got a double degree, one in dairy science and I can't remember teaching. The other one was teaching. So we moved to Highland.
And always wanted to come back because of the cows, and had the opportunity to do so, and the rest is history, I guess. All our cattle have names. They're registered, which means they're identified and have a pedigree that we can trace back to the beginning. Which, if we wanted to, we could go all the way back to when the first Holsteins come over from the Netherlands and find the ancestors. We go by names, of course. The bigger the farm gets, they go by numbers, and now with the new electronic identifications and so forth, most of them have a number, and they'll open up their iPhone and find out what's going on with the cow. And of course, it's fun to remember the old cows and stuff by their name, and some names we retire. My great-grandparents who purchased this land, then they farmed it. Basically, it's always been a family farm. Great-grandfather took over, and my grandfather. Then my father, there was 3 boys, and this was at the age when World War II started, that they were all eligible to be drafted into the service. But my dad was the oldest, and my grandfather had a stroke, and so he was exempted so he could take care of the farm. Amazingly enough, the government actually valued the farmland back there and the farmers because of having to have food for everyone. But my 2 uncles, they served in World War II. And then they come back and they rented farms close by, and our family worked close together. The 3 brothers and us kids, we helped each other with baling hay and everything that needed to be done. And all our buildings and so forth, we never hired anyone to do that kind of work. We always did it all ourselves, working together as a family. Then in 1956, when health department in Illinois basically wanted all dairies to meet certain requirements for producing milk. That means that at least twice a year, most of the time more than that there's a public health inspector, just like you have for hospitals or restaurants or anything. They come to our farm and check everything out to see that we're producing a good, healthy product. The health department said that all the dairies had to be a grade A dairy. So we had to make a decision whether we would keep milking cows or not. And so they decided to go ahead. And a lot of it was because of my interest in the dairy cows. We had to build something different for milking. And we built what was then kind of the standard for small farms. A building with 6 or 7 stanchions. And we put that many cows in, milk them, turn them out, and then put some more in the milk. But, and like I said, everything had to be inspected before you could be required or be regarded as a grade A dairy. And then they put the shingle up out there, and then they kept monitoring everything. And if you had problems, they could kick you off the market if they wanted to, or take your grade A certificate away. And back then, you had to have certain requirements. You still do today with the type of equipment, your facilities, so that you could wash up, clean up, and that also meant putting in a bulk tank, getting rid of your milk cans, and taking them out of the cooler, so that the milk basically was never touched by the hand like we used to if we had to milk by hand. It'd go into a pipeline, into the bulk tank, and then when the milkman comes, he hooked up to the bottom of the tank and went right into the truck, and then the same thing when he got back to the dairy. That was in 1960. We started building on that, and we milked that way. When I come back home to the farm, we was still milking in that 6 stanchion, and we was milking up to 60 cows, so that's a lot of in and out. And it took a long time, and it was all, you had to stoop down, get underneath the cow, squat down. And so in 1976, we decided if we was going to stay in, we're going to have to build what we call a parlor, where we could stand up and do all the milking. The cows would be up higher. And if it hadn't been for that, we probably wouldn't have lasted too many more years, because your legs just couldn't keep doing that for that many cows. Once you're permitted, you keep that permit as long as you're producing milk and you meet the state qualifications and the federal. As every year or 2 years, you're required to have a federal inspection also. And the difference is the state inspection, they come in and they'll leave a paper or something where they'll mark maybe something that, say your walls are dirty. They might mark that. And you have D grades then. You got so many points, and you have to score 90 or above to continue to produce grade A milk. So as long as you can do that, and you're producing milk, you'll retain your permit, and there's no problems. Now, if you get under that, they can, what they call, degrade you, and your milk can't go to, like the Prairie Farms at Carlinville. It may have to go to a cheese plant, or you just have to dump it until you meet specifications again, but that doesn't happen very often. One of the things about being a dairy farmer is that we are providing, I call it God's most perfect food to people. It's a product that has to be, handled quickly and properly. And so on the farms, most farms anyway, we have what we call a bulk tank where we collect the milk from the cows, usually not more than 4 milkings. So that's like 2 days. Then it's picked up and taken to the local dairy processor, which in our case is Carlinville. And from then it's loaded, and basically within less than 48 hours, it'll be in a bottle ready to go to the store. Our mission is to provide, dairy milk, dairy products to people all over the world. And whenever things get a little tough and you stop and wondering why you're doing something or is it worthwhile and stuff, you have to stop and think, God put me here to do this, and this product is probably one of the most important products in the world for people. So we do try to produce the highest quality milk that we can, and this is why the government, is also involved, if you want to call it that, the health departments. And so, like our milk, you have what we call mastitis, which is infection in the udder, and you treat it with antibiotics. We're very strict on how we handle that. We can't get that into the milk that goes to the consumer. And so we have withdrawal times. We have to throw that milk away. We can't use it. When the milkman comes, every time he picks up milk, he takes a sample. When he gets to the dairy, they take that sample and they check it for antibiotics, somatic cell count, and anything that contaminant that might be in the milk. Every load is tested before it is unloaded at, say, Carlinville Prairie Farms. And then after they get it in and before they process it, they tested everything again. So as far as producing and having a safe supply for dairy products, there's many roadblocks that'll keep that from being, I don't want to say it, unclean. We'll put it that way. So you can be assured that any dairy products that you're producing or receiving should be as safe as it can possibly be. And that's one of the things on the farm that we really worry about, making sure we're producing the highest quality milk that you're going to be drinking. When you buy your milk or what dairy product in the store, there's the date on there, best used by a certain date. And at Prairie Farms, we pride ourselves on a high quality milk that has a long life shelf, and basically that's about 20, 21 days. But if you keep it cool and properly stored, it'll last longer than that. There's no doubt about it. But it is continually checked. And now we are getting into processes that will keep this product a lot longer, what they call UHT, which is a high moisture or a high temperature process. And now we're also getting into extended life, where it is what is called aseptic bottling, which can stay on the shelves for up to 3 or 4 months without refrigeration even. So once it is opened, then you have to refrigerate it. But the advantage of this, and we're seeing a big uptake on this, is say even schools. Schools get a delivery of milk, say on Monday. You have bad weather, don't have school for a couple of days, well, then they have to do something with that milk because they got to keep it cold and so forth. And so schools, nursing homes, hospitals, even convenience stores that are small convenience stores out in this rural America where there isn't a lot of traffic. If they can have this kind of product on the shelf, they don't have to worry about spoilage, thrown away. Dairy doesn't have to worry about picking it back up and so forth. So there's a lot of safety that goes into your milk, but it also there's new things coming that will make everything more efficient.
I grew up on a farm, as I said, down the road. We had Herefords, Chester White hogs, and chickens, which I didn't care for too much, but they gave us eggs. So I was used to the animals, not dairy. We did have, as a child, I did have milking shorthorns. My sister and I ended up having to milk these 2 cows by hand, and we did it at night. My mother did it in the morning. My father never milked a cow. Dave and I milked, morning and night for quite a few years there. I did not milk until we built the parlor. I did not want to have to go between the cows and squat down there and try to milk. So after we built the parlor, herringbone, I didn't have to get between cows. So then I started milking. It was always fun. You know, we made it. I always said, if you're going to do something, make it into fun, or it's just work. I do everything but bobcatting. When we moved here, I told Dave I would do anything. I worked in the field. I've done those things. But I said I do not want to learn to run the bobcat. So I never have. All the kids have learned how. Logan knows how now, and he's, 10? I just never did want to learn to do the bobcat. Always helped with the cows, go out and milk at 4 o'clock in the morning and come in, fix breakfast. And then I enjoy working with flowers. I did a lot of work. I like flowers, but had a garden, had a large garden for a while. I found out that the green beans were always ready to can at showtime. And you stay up till 12 o'clock and can green beans because you've been to the cow show. You decide, I think I'm going to buy cans of green beans instead of canning them myself.
My relationship with my daughter and with my dad, it's different because now I'm on the elder side of this situation. I've never felt comfortable with giving orders or stepping in, maybe. I've always been one that I would try to set an example and hope that they being around would pick up on what I was doing and how I was doing it without me having to, go into a lot of detail or orders, I call it. The work with the cattle, because it was early till late, and is all the time. But I really didn't think about it. What I was interested in was working with the cattle and the genetics and so forth. And it all kind of fell together. That's what I wanted to do. And I really never gave it a thought about how much work it was. Growing up, I knew what work was. There's no doubt about it. And one thing that I've tried to set an example, and I haven't mentioned too much to my children, but one thing was always expected from little on was that we work together, and you're never done working until everybody's done. There was no separate jobs. You work together on all jobs. When we first started milking, this is before we built the little stanchion barn to be grade A, we had to carry the milk from one barn to where the milk cans were, put it in the strainer, into the milk can, and then into the milk cooler. So it was always a lot of work, and we forked all the manure by hand with a fork. And one of the things I always remember, Good Friday, we had church at 10 o'clock in the morning, but then the rest of the day, unless it was too muddy, that's the day you started cleaning out all the manure. Our family has shown cattle for quite a while. I guess the first one was my mother. She grew up on a dairy farm down by Effingham. Her and her brother, my uncle, who was the one that really mentored me in getting into genetics and showing and so forth. It's always been pretty important to me, starting out in 4-H and so forth, and then you kind of develop a love for it. It's a lot of work, it takes extra time, but there's so many things that come out of it. You get to meet so many good people, do things away from the farm a little bit. And what's been especially enjoyable is seeing my kids and my grandkids just develop an unbelievable love for the cow and the showing the cow and the work we put into it and what it does for the family, because you have to work together. I mean, there's no getting around it. That one of the major things for me in showing was to see the kids out working on their own with their cattle. And as they got older, taking full responsibility because Mom and I was home doing the work while they were at the shows a lot of the time. We tried to get there all the time.
I've never really shown cattle. If we win and we have too many to show in one class, I will help out and I will show, but I'm not I'm not versed in it like the rest of them.
It's a real family bonding thing, but the responsibility and the love that they develop for the cow and their projects is something you can't put into words, really.
When you show cattle, you get more attached to those especially.
We have been that way, and now my grandkids, even though only one of the set of the families live on the farm here, but all of them have showed. And one of the highlights of the year is the state fair, where like the last few years we've had 9-10 grandkids showing at the state fair, and we always get a picture of the group, and it's meaningful to me for sure, and it's so rewarding that we could raise the family on the farm and do things together. And they learn a lot, because showing has gotten to be a little different than it used to be, because it seems like the ones left showing that they want to get professionals involved and it gets more competitive and so forth. And I'll never forget when my oldest son and daughter was getting up in the high school age and had a pretty good calf, and they thought, can we get a professional fitter to get it ready for the show? And I said, that costs a lot of money and we don't really have it. And I said, if you want to be like that, you learn to do it. And I said, I'm not paying for a professional fitter when it's something that you can learn. Believe it or not, my son, he was a real good athlete. He'd come home from basketball practice and wonder where he was at in the middle of winter, and he'd be out in the barn clipping on a calf to learn how to do it. The youngest daughter, Laura, she's kind of been the same way. She's kind of taken over that part of it now, but it's something that they learn, and then I think in the long run they're really glad they did, because you can see the pride that they take in that. As I always told the kids, it says, the show is one day, it's one man's opinion, and they only saw her for about 5 minutes. You see her all the time, so you got a different opinion than maybe he did that day. Of course, we want to win. That's the purpose of going out there. But I've always stressed that that's not the most important thing. But when you do win, it's recognition. Your peers, your other dairy farmers or other breeders that are at the shows and showing cattle, they see what kind of cattle you have, and therefore the value of your animals at home go up, because apparently you got the right kind, you're doing the right job if your animals stand near the top of the class. One of the greatest thrills that we had was when the younger two daughters, Laura and Janae, were in high school. Let's see, I guess it was 2000. They showed the grand champion and the reserve grand champion hosting at the state hosting show. And we bred both animals. In other words, we bred the cow. The calf was born here. We raised the calf. And so that has always meant a lot to me, that we bred the ones that we showed. We didn't go out and try to buy, spend a lot of money to buy a good heifer. But anyway, that's the only time that's ever been done in Illinois Holstein history. Is one family had the champion and the reserve champion, and they were both homebred cows. Our kids and the grandkids, well, I guess you'd say basically grew up working with the cows.
Goodness. I think my whole life has been out here with Dad. I always wanted to be with Dad. Mom would complain all the time because here she had 3 girls and 1 boy, but even the girls didn't want to help her in the house. My sister Janae probably came the closest, but we all wanted to be outside helping Dad. And I was literally at his side all the time. I can remember cleaning out calf pens when I couldn't really do anything, but he'd pitch some out towards the door for me so that I could just pitch that little bit out the door and feel like I was doing something. I can remember being in the parlor, and my job was to dip them because I couldn't reach them to do anything else. So, they found ways to include you.
As soon as they were, 4, 5, 6 years old, they're out starting to feed bottles to the calves. And then they get older, the buckets and hay and helping with the milking and scraping up the manure afterwards and whatever has to be done.
At 3 or 4 years old, of course, we all tied up calves for showing and stuff. And I was always thought I could do anything that anybody else could do. So I tried to lead a really, really big cow, and that didn't work out so well for me. I ended up with 22 stitches.
So, like I said, it's a family operation. To me, it's, they're learning how to work. And yet we try to have fun doing it. And so I think it'll pay off for them in the long run, because they know and appreciate that, hey, this is what you do, and it's got to be done, and you do it. Our relationship, and this is what, was always my love, was the cows and this part, and my kids have been that way too. All my kids are involved with cattle, even though they're not 3 of them aren't on the farm, but they live close. My oldest daughter lives where my wife grew up, and she helps us a lot whenever we need extra help. The second daughter lives about 15 miles away, but they got a nice little place where they keep some calves for their girls to learn what it's like to raise animals, and they have the love for animals and to show to the animals. My son works for Growmark, and he's got a nice place out in the country where he keeps some cattle of his for his kids to show and so forth. And then, of course, the youngest daughter's here on the farm actually working with us. So the cows, in a way, are just an extension of our family. That's probably the way we treat them more than we need to. But it's what makes it all worthwhile, it seems like. We've been really blessed with some of the things that have happened. We think they were bad at the time, but not always. My oldest daughter, I'll give her a lot of credit, because she's been quiet. She loved the cows. She was a hard worker, but she always kind of went to the background to my son. And so when it was time for her to finally get married, we sold one of her cows to help pay for her wedding. And of course that was tough, but she realized that, and luckily she sold really well and basically paid for the whole wedding. So she was really thankful for her, one of her favorite cows that paid for that. And then my son, he had, the summer before, he had a 2-year-old cow that was named grand champion at the junior show at the Springfield. That's the first time we'd ever had that. When she had her calf, she couldn't get up after that. She was down. And so what do? A lot of times it's milk fever, but it wasn't milk fever. So we had to put her on a board, drag her out to a machine shed where she had some room, and hope that she'd get up in a few days. Well, she didn't. And of course, after having a calf, she's full of milk, and you got to do something with that, because she gets mastitis, which is you have to throw bad for the cow, period. And a week went by, and she wasn't getting up, and we treated her with different things, and we tried raising her up, see if she could stand, and she couldn't. So he wasn't going to give up. We had our portable milker. She'd lay on her side, and she got to the point where whenever he carried the milker out there, she'd roll over on her side and go back. She never quit eating, and that was the key. So we always had hope. A month went by, and my son was getting up every morning before to go to high school, milking that cow, come home a lot of times after ball practice and milking that cow, feeding her. We'd raise her up. She couldn't stand. Let her back down. This went on for almost 4 months. She was still down and not being able to get up. It was about ready to give up. It was, that's a long time to have to milk her night and morning with the portable milker laying on her side. And about the 6th month, one morning we went out there and she was standing up. And she was 3 years old at the time, and that cow lived to be 10. And so what that taught my son and our family is that, sometimes we just can't give up. We have to keep at it, have faith that God will direct us in the way he wants us to go. And that's a lasting story that the whole family will never forget, how perseverance we had in that. Then Laura, she's had similar things. She's always had the love for the cows, and probably the hardest working of all of them when it comes to doing actual work. And she's had her share of heartaches also. I've always said to my kids, and when you got livestock, you got dead stock. And one of the things that I really appreciate about the family and the dairy farming, and God's given us this opportunity. Even my youngest granddaughter, by the time they're 1 or 2 years old, they've seen an animal born alive, and the pride and the happiness that we have. And they've also seen one come out that didn't live. So they learn real quick what life's all about. It's not a given that, everything will be good. We go out there when the cow's having a calf, and we don't think about it being not alive. We think about it being alive and looking to the future, what that animal will bring. What's been especially enjoyable is seeing my kids and my grandkids just develop an unbelievable love for the cow and showing the cow. Janae, she's always the more sensitive and loved her cows. She would never give up on anything if there was something wrong with them. She had a favorite red and white cow that had some problems, and she would get up every morning, go tie the cow up and feed her. So she made sure she had the feed that she needed. And she did that forever. And then she had a 2-year-old that was our highest scored classified cow. She was second at the state fair. Really a wonderful future. Had the hoof trimmer here to trim her. She trimmed her feet. She went out to the bunk. She was standing there eating. We trimmed another cow, went back to the feed bunk. She's laying there dead. Then she had another one of her favorites. She was in the computer feeder stall eating. We went to get the rest of the cows out of the pasture. We come back in. There she lay dead in the stall. Janae was really shook because all that stuff bothered her no end. And so that night, I was feeling kind of pretty tough, didn't know what to say. So I wrote her a letter from the cow, thanking her for the way she loved her, took care of her, and on about it, and made it the letter to Janae from the cow and put it under her pillow. And she still has it. It was something that a father and daughter can't begin to develop anywhere else. And then last year, Noelle, Janae's daughter, she had one of her favorite animals just all of a sudden die. So I clipped the ear tag out with her name, put it in the envelope, and wrote her a letter, which she put on her wall. There's so many things that have happened through the years that just pulls the family together, and you can't put dollars on that. We don't talk a lot as a family about things, but it's there. You know it's there. The kids have been so responsible, and they show that as they're growing older. And they've shown this love for the cow and what it can do, and it shows through the grandkids because they've all got it. We just experienced the birth of twin heifers, and you wouldn't believe the kids have to come over right away and see them and fight over who's going to name it, and the joy that it brings to the family. I mentioned the smaller farms are the ones that are leaving, and it gets to be a matter of economics and a lot of other things that go into it, like on a dairy farm. Stewardship has always been, something we take pride in because we want to keep our land. We don't want it blowing away. We don't want it washing away because we know how important the land is to us. We hope that other people realize how important land is for production of food. But another resource is water, and that's one of our problems. We've always had to haul water for our cattle. Our wells are not able to be deep because we have limestone under the grounds. It's hard to get through the limestone. And then in early 50s, they started limestone quarries. It's only a mile away, half a mile away. And so the deeper they go to take limestone out of the ground, they cut into our streams, and the water flowed back into the pits. And of course, a mile over, there used to be 4 farms along that road, and they're all gone because the quarries basically dried them up and they moved on. And so, but stewardship is important, and one of the things that makes it hard for a dairy farm to continue is all the regulations. We're one of the few actual farms that are required by law to be federally and state inspected for how we operate, how we keep our equipment. Our milk is tested for antibiotics and things, every pickup. And so that comes into play. We just had a federal inspection where a man comes here and goes over everything, and hopefully we're good enough. Yeah, and then the other thing is the EPA has gotten into a lot of what I call regulations. They don't always work with good stewardship on a farm. If they had to come out and live with what they preach, I think they'd change their tune a little bit, because we're not going to do anything that's going to disrupt our farming. And they come out with some pretty wild regulations, and we've been fighting that. And then the last few years, there's been a I don't know what you call it, watershed rulings that they want to control all the water, whether it's going down a ditch or whether it's your farm pond or anything. And, they're taking a lot of freedoms away from trying to do things that we know are best for our farm. A small farm, we have certain expenses, whether we have 1 cow or if we have 1,000 cows. And so family, once you get above so many cows, then you got to start looking at hired labor. And then that gets to be another challenge. Putting in more technology, like right now, one of the big things is robotic milking, where we put in robots to actually do the milking of the cow. But one robot takes the place of like 60 cows. So say the number of cows that we have. But it would cost me over $250,000 to put that in. Well, there's no return that I can see that we could do that. So, like a lot of things, you have to have the economy of size. And so, as you go around, there's less family farms, less small farms, what we call small farms, under 100 cows, or even under 200-300 cows anymore. Most of them are over 1,000, up to 10,000-12,000 cows herds. And so that just changes everything. It's economy of size.
They know probably more of the hard times about it than I did growing up. My folks were of the generation where you didn't talk about how hard it was to get some stuff done, and how, the hard ends of the financial ends of farming and stuff. And my kids are around it so much now with being home all the time with the homeschool stuff that they know a lot. And we talk about the future and how it's going to be really tough for small dairy farms. Come on, Diamond. Come on. Come on. I know. Hi. Come on, Diamond. Let's go. We're going to enjoy the ride as long as we can make it, and hopefully we can raise the kids and develop that work ethic. That was the goal, was to be able to raise the kids on the farm like I was, because I knew there was no better place to raise kids to be productive humans and citizens as they grow up, because where else are you going to learn not only responsibility and work ethic, but the realities of life, and how really dependent we are on God for everything. Because there's no other profession that you have to rely on God to get you through. Like, you can't control the rain. You can't control crops. You can't control a cow when they're going to get sick and when they're not, and when things are going to happen and when they're not. And you have to learn to roll with the punches. And there's no better life lesson than that. Come over here with the middle one. She wanted to bring him in the house, but Dad said no. I don't know that I would be able to keep going the farm until retirement age. It gets harder every year with equipment prices. When COVID hit, everything just blew up. You can't even get parts for things that are old anymore, and you can't afford brand new when you've only milking 60 cows. But if you milk more than 60 cows, now I've got to hire outside labor, and that can't be real affordable either. So now you've got to expand and put more capital into something. So it's a hard situation to know what to do. You got to spend money to make money is what they always say, but you got to make sure you can have a return on your investment too. We'll keep things going as long as we can, and as long as it makes good sense. And the hardest thing will be the heart, because the heart's going to want to keep going longer than it does make sense to the brain, probably, because the heart's with the cows. But We'll do it as long as we can. It could be hopefully till the kids are out of school, but at the same time, if it's not, then I guess we've got more free time with them. So we'll find the blessings in either way. If I get to retirement age and I still have cows, I'll be happy. But if I still got my family and I don't, that's the main thing.
We're going to need food. If you paying any attention, they're talking about artificial meat and artificial this and artificial that. And it's not going over too well because it's not the same, you know. And so we're always going to need people to produce milk, pork, beef, and the thing and the way it's going, you know, it's nothing different than any industry, whether it's coal or energy or electricity or whatever it is. Times move on and we'll adapt and somebody will do the job. It may not be as many and it may not be, well, it's not the close family working together like it used to be, that's for sure. I mean, it's just impossible. My father was, he was quite a person, really. Very faithful. He grew up pretty fast. He graduated from high school. He was going to go to college, would have been the first one, but then my grandfather had problems and World War was going on, and 2 younger brothers had to go to the service. And when my grandfather got sick, they wouldn't let him go because we needed farmers also. He was named in 1944 as the outstanding 4-H member in the United States of America and received a beautiful silverware collection from the President of the United States. So, you know, someone that set the tone for all of us. First, him and Mom both very religious. That was the most important thing, and that's what they taught us, and we try to teach our kids, and now through the grandkids. But he was a hard worker, and he loved to, him and his brothers they loved to tinker, and we did most of the building, and all our buildings we built ourselves, and he enjoyed that very much. One of my uncles was good with metal. He built a lot of things that we couldn't afford to buy. So he'd set out and build it. But my dad, he was a quiet man. I tried to take after that. I can remember working with my dad was great because many times we hardly said a word all day. But we worked all day together and we knew what we was going to do and what we had to do. And that, to me, that was one of the greatest lessons was, okay, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but you look around and you'll see what you have to do and then do it. Don't put off. So, yeah, he taught, and he was very active in organizations, in church, and never looked for recognition, never talked about it. And so he was quite a role model for me. My parents set a good example of you have to help your community and your organizations, and if you've been given some leadership ability, you need to use it. And so through the years, I've been, I guess you'd have to say, very active in different organizations. Church always comes first. And then, like I said, I help coach some of my kids. But the dairy industry, I was always involved in the Holstein Association and have moved up and served as president of Illinois Holstein, served as delegate to National Holstein conventions many times, and on different committees and so forth throughout the state. And I served on Governor Edgar back, I don't remember what year it was, appointed me to the Livestock Commissioner Board for the state of Illinois. which had the responsibility of setting a lot of the health and livestock health requirements in the state. And that was an interesting position. I've also served on the advisory council at the University of Illinois Animal and Dairy Science programs, and of course that was interesting. And then other activities with DHIA, which is a Dairy Record Association, and the service company, or the M&M service company, which is our farmer-owned co-op of fertilizer and chemicals and seed. I served on that and secretary for several years. Then I had a chance and was asked to be on the Prairie Farms Dairy Board of Directors, and I've been on that now for 21 or 2 years, and secretary all but 2 years. And that's been a real interesting and rewarding position to be in serving. But I've always felt that, we need to give back, and we need to be involved in our whatever business we're in. And again, that just shows you, though, that you have to have a family behind you that'll allow you to do these things, because just because you drive out the lane and go to a meeting or something, it doesn't mean that other things don't get done at home. So you have to rely on a good family support. And we have that. We've had that. Our kids have always been able to help, and we've wanted them to do things, so we sacrificed a lot for them. And now the grandkids, they are out here working, and they do a lot of stuff, and they're still only 12, 14 years old or younger, and we couldn't do it without them. So yeah, we want to give back and work it out, but again, it takes the whole family working together to do these things. Most people, if they stop and think about it, they realize that it's still the most important industry in the United States. Agriculture made the United States great, because we've always been able to produce an abundance of food. So our people have really never went without the good food to eat, affordable food, and we've also provided food to many countries and nations so that they also could have something to eat. But one of the great things that people forget about agriculture is the story I've just told, and how families pull together, work together, and what it means to the family to keep something going. I don't know if you can get that by working at a business that you don't own, or all you do is getting a paycheck. It's hard to develop loyalty and have that feeling that you really belong to something, and it's part of you, and you hope it becomes a part of your family. And the other thing, I think through the years, I know it's probably changing a little bit, but I think most farmers have had a strong faith in God. And how can you not be a farmer and not have faith in God? Because every spring we go out, work His soil, we plant His seeds, and we can't control if that seed's going to come to life and germinate and grow. And then we have to rely on water, and then we hope in the end that we get a nice yield or production so that we do have something to feed the people that we love. And that all comes, as a gift from God. The other thing about the family farm that has meant the most to me is working with my wife. She basically, I say bought in. She grew up on a farm, not a dairy farm, but she's bought into it. And there's no way I could have done this without her, because it takes more than just one person. And so she's been the backbone, really, of trying to keeping us all together. As we got into it, she got to understanding my love for the cows, I'd say. And she knew this before we got married, because our time was limited. We didn't run around or anything like that, because she always knew if I said I'd be there at 7 o'clock, it may not be because I was out with a cow that was having a calf. And so she got a pretty good understanding before we even married that maybe the cows come first. and but then as we grew and developed into the family, and especially after my dad was no longer able to help me and we were pretty well on our own, it was a true partnership, because we did everything together. I mean, the milking, field work, whatever it took to get the job done, she was right there beside me, and I never heard a bad word or a depressed feeling or anything. She was always there to support what we did, and I think a lot of that goes back to we had the same good Christian faith, and we realized what we were doing and who was behind us. Because with your own families, the activities, we've been very active in a lot of different things: church, 4-H, FFA, Holstein Association, dairy groups. And so that it's not only a early morning to late night. It's if you want to do the things that other people do, you got to somehow fit it in and work around it. And I coached our kids' basketball and softball teams for 30 some years. And so, somebody had to kind of fill in so you could do those things. And my wife and I were trying to do that for my daughter. She does that with her kids. And so I guess one of the things that's, the saddest about the family farm is that you're to the point where you can't really afford to do a lot of that stuff without hired labor, and that gets to be another problem. A good day on the farm. That's an interesting question.
All days are good days.
I guess for me, it's, of course, waking up healthy.
Even if you want to call them a bad day, they usually pan out and they turn around and they're good days.
You can plan all you want to, but when you wake up in the morning, you never know what you're going to run into during that day.
On a dairy farm, it's hard to plan anything because something happens and your plans are going to get changed. So you don't want to be set in thinking, I'm going to do this or this, because you may not do that.
A good day for a lot of years was walking out to the milk house and I had water come out of the spout.
No day is typical on a dairy farm.
Or I come in on Sunday morning and there's enough water to take a shower before I go to church. So that's the start of a good morning. And then, of course, not finding any cows with problems, like down, can't get up, or having a calf that you have to call the vet to try to get it out. And hopefully the Cardinals or Illinois won the ball game the night before. That always helps a little bit.
There are bad days, but you learn to live with those things, and it makes you wiser and better off.
Some of my favorite times on the farm was after milking, hitting ground balls and playing catch with the kids. And then we'd walk out to the heifer barn, look at the calves, and talk about what they look like and what we hope they'll turn into as a cow, and come back in. And, on the dairy farm, you don't get a lot of sleep to start with, so and you're ready to go to bed and thank God for everything you got. Having spent my life basically on this farm, and all the years and all the memories and all the efforts that we put into it, it's quite a legacy, and it meant a lot to keep it going. I didn't think we'd be going now, but with my younger daughter and her family wanting to come back, and it's getting tough. But it like working with your dad and my cousins and uncles, where we built everything together and worked together, the baling, the hay, and everything that needed to be done, we worked together. That was priceless, really. I was fortunate. When I come back to the farm with my family, we was able to expand a little bit, and through being all the labor done by the family and so forth, we've been able to make a go of it. But it's getting harder. Right now, the milk price, it don't even pay the bills, and so for the future, a farm our size, it's going to be really tough. I don't know even if my daughter can remain in the business for many more years. And as far as the grandchildren, it don't look good at all. First of all, we'd have to have a lot more ground. There's new regulations about how much manure you can haul, put on the ground, how much or when you can do it, and all kinds of EPA regulations that make it harder and harder, especially for a small farm to continue. I've said many times, I thank God for putting me here when he did. And you can't do anything without a good wife that has been so supportive, works harder than I do, and a good family. And I guess if I had to criticize myself, I don't express that. I've always been taught, kind of like my dad, that you got a job, you do it, and you don't look for rewards, and you don't necessarily hand out honors just because somebody did something that they were supposed to do anyway. And the other thing, well, I love sports, but I think I've always been able to keep it in perspective. I follow it. I love it. My kids have loved it. And but we also know that Sunday mornings you go to church, you don't go play ball. If you got work to do, which is on a dairy farm, is all the time. So if you can listen to the game on the radio, fine, but you're not going to go in the house and sit and watch it on television when there's work to be done outside. I hope that my years of service to organizations and all the years of coaching kids, that's been another joy of my life. How you affect them young people and see them grow. That people do, and I think they have appreciated some of the service that I've provided. But I do wish that I was a little more able to, say, pat somebody on the back.
I think you just did.
Probably I don't think about it enough and tell people thank you. But I always tried to put in perspective that God's got a plan for all of us. And this was one of his plans for me, because I could have done other things for sure that would have probably been easier. And how do you put that into words and on paper? But again, God's been good to us, and what we try to do is do it to his glory.